put a mirror up to your stakeholders and say, what are you seeing about us? What can we build on? And those kind of questions sometimes can be a little bit uncomfortable, but you only know if you ask the question.
It's the e-commerce master plan podcast, here to help you solve your marketing problems and grow your e-commerce business. Cutting through the hype to bring you inspiration and advice from the e-commerce sector and beyond. Here's your host, Chloe Thomas.
Hello and welcome. It's great to have you here. Thank you for hitting play and choosing to listen to one of our inspiring guests. Me and the team get so much joy when we see our listeners raving about us on social or in lists or blogs, so it's only fair to repay that by giving a lovely shout out to the person who was kind enough to shout about us in the first place. So, thank you to Marta, who's a fractional e-commerce manager, for saying some lovely things about us on LinkedIn, especially about our trends episode, so the top tips episode from earlier in January. So Marta, thank you so much for saying lovely things on LinkedIn, and thank you for listening. In this episode, we're talking B Corp again. Of course we are, because it's B Corp month. You have so far this month heard 3 interviews with brilliant e-commerce stores who are B Corps or on the journey to B Corp. But in this episode, we're talking to a B leader, someone who is skilled in helping businesses become and stay as B Corps. And we're talking about the stay bit. What happens after you've certified? What have you got to do? And how do you make sure you do it well? Some really interesting angles coming up, and we'll also be learning a little bit about the new format of B Corp that is probably coming in 2025, but we don't yet know for sure. Make sure you listen to the end of the episode so you don't miss out on my guest top tips, which were awesome or are awesome, and my own take on this episode. If your tech stack is becoming a bottleneck to growth, it's time to replatform, and you should check out Shopline. Shopline is the modern commerce platform that's disrupting Europe as one of Asia's leading e-commerce platforms. Whether your bottleneck is setting up more sales channels like social commerce or expanding to new markets globally, Shopline takes care of everything from store setups, checkouts and payments to logistics and more. With single-click migration and out-of-the-box tools, they're there to help. The best part about it, you don't need to pay until your site is live. Here in the UK, they power brands like In The Style and Everything £5, whilst in Asia, they're the platform of choice for huge brands like Lego and Muji. If you want to scale, it's time to book your free trial or have a chat with one of the Shopline team. Find out what Shopline could do for you via ecmp.info/Shopline. That's ecmp.info/SHOPLINE. Do you have a problem only an awesome piece of e-commerce tech can solve? Is your e-commerce tech stack not quite fit for purpose anymore? Then you should check out the latest addition to the e-commerce master plan family, e-commerce tech. Yes, we've got a new person in the clan, or a new website rather in the clan. It's a website where you can explore the latest and best technology on offer. We're going through a hugely changing time in the tech landscape at the moment, and if you want to be bringing the best results you can in your business, then you need to be on top of what's going on in tech. Head to the e-commerce tech website and sign up to our email updates via ecmp.info/tech. That's ecmp.info/TECH. So ecmp.info/tech to find out all the best tools for your e-commerce store. And now to introduce our expert guest. Sarah Whale is a B leader. That's someone certified to help other businesses become B Corps, and founder of Profit Impact, where she helps many businesses create a thriving future. Hello, Sarah.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Really excited to be here.
It's great to have you on. Last year in B Corp month, we did how to become a B Corp. So it's kind of only right that a year on we do how do you stay a B Corp?
Excellent. My favourite topic.
Yeah. Before we get into that, though, you are an accountant by trade, which I don't think most people assume sustainability business experts are accountants. So how did you end up specialising in B Corp and sustainability?
When you're looking at numbers in a business and you are not looking more broadly at social and environmental impact, and you make every decision based on profit, you're fundamentally missing the big area. And it took me a very long time to realize that. I moved out of finance to stay in finance, but to incorporate social and environmental. And that's really what led me to B Corp.
So you were heading down that path, and then the B Corp came along as this kind of, I guess, gold standard of business certification. You're like, that's a train I need to get on with.
Yeah, it was more that I left my finance role not knowing why I left it. I just couldn't quite put my finger on what wasn't quite working. And then I went for a finance director role for a B Corp and discovered B Corp. And then everything fell into place. And then it was like, that's why I've been unsettled, because I've not found that looking purely at profit is the right way.
Yeah, it's kind of like, right. There were all these other stats I was completely ignoring.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, if you make every decision based on profit, eventually, if you imagine every business does that, and there's 300 million businesses in the world, mathematically, the planet and society will suffer. That's the basic maths on it. So it was a bit of a light bulb moment, that one.
Thank goodness that's the job you applied for, isn't it? It's kind of like,
yeah, exactly.
The strange things that come out of the recruitment process.
It's true.
So since that time, you've helped many businesses both certify and recertify. Before we get into kind of like what happens after you become certified the first time, can you tell us a bit about recertification before we drive the audience crazy by saying it again and again and again and they don't know what we're about? So what are the rules around recertification?
Well, recertification, I mean, the first thing to say is that the B Corp standards are currently under review. So I would expect that that's going to change in 2025. So depending on the timing, you'll need to have a look and see what's changed. But where it is today, right now, what will happen is you will be reviewed as to your original B Corp certification and see what has moved forward and has anything moved back, and see what your performance is. And you'll go through a reverification. That's effectively it. The idea behind B Corp and sustainability generally is, it's not just a certification and you're done. They will have expected you to have moved on, but you still, the basic premise is you've got to get over that hurdle rate of 80.
So if we certify for the first time at 90 and then we recertify and we've gone back to 85, so we're still above the threshold, but we've gone backwards, are we allowed to stay a B Corp?
Yeah, that won't change. And it's very interesting because I feel 3 years is a long time between certification and recertification. And I think Profit Impact certified end of 21. Now our business has changed beyond measure really in 2 years. And so actually our score is going to go backwards because of changes we've had to make. But that's the reality of business. So yeah, as long as you're over that 80, you'll be good to go.
Cool. And you mentioned the new version of B Corp that's impending, I suppose, or pending, one should say. As we're talking about it, and we're talking recertification, at that point, will everybody have to shift to the new certification process?
Yes, they will. It's going to be staggered. So you're going to get, I understand that you're going to get quite a lot of warning. So it's not going to be a case of, all right, the standards have changed, you're due to recertify next month, right, everybody run.
That would be quite evil, wouldn't it?
It would. The changes are quite significant from what I've seen so far. It's no longer going to be getting over 80. There's going to be, 6 to 8 things you have to do, whereas you don't have to do those. Most things you don't have to do at the moment, but in the new world, you'll have to do the base. So it is going to be a change.
But it's only kind of natural. As you said, B Corp is about embracing a new way of working. It's not a once every 3 years, do a load of homework, get a tick. It's a whole business philosophy. And based on that being about constantly improving your business to become more sustainable, and the way that sustainability is evolving and in some areas becoming easier to do, in some areas becoming more difficult to do, it would be kind of silly if the B Corp criteria or certification process stayed the same. because it's almost counter to the whole point of it.
Completely, Chloe. I absolutely agree. And there are a whole host of reasons that standards are evolving. And that's partly is because people want to raise the standards within B Corp. But also, as you say, the world's changing and there are things happening that we have got to get a grip of with the planet, with the cost of living, all sorts of things, mental health. There's so many things happening, and I think we can all see it. We've got to start making some changes towards that. We're going to have to push ourselves a bit harder, which is, I think, the right thing to do. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it's good to be pushed a little bit outside of our comfort zone.
Oh, definitely. And very few good things come easily, I think. Before we go off on that philosophical tangent, that process of kind of staying the course, remaining in B Corp mindset after the day you get your certification, because often you submit everything and then there's a pause before you get the results, which I can imagine could send a lot of people off the boil with doing this. So how do you recommend those you're working with keep their focus and keep improving things? So as when that recertification comes around in 3 years' time, they know what to expect. They know they've been moving in the right direction. They know they've been doing what they need to do. So it's not kind of chucked in a cupboard. And I'll stop using silly metaphors and let you answer the question.
I think there's definitely been a bit of throwing into the cupboard. So we launched our continuous impact program last year for exactly that reason. I've seen it with my customers. It doesn't matter how passionate you are, the reality kicks in, and we've all got urgent things, all got really urgent things always jumping out that we have to do. So we set this program up and we keep it relatively simple. We have our goals for the year, the classic project plan. We will split them over the quarters. We will check in. And so we'll have regular check-ins. And then this report builds up to the impact report. And it's that accountability for the business owners that they know they're going to be having a call with Sarah, and she's going to be asking them what they've done. They do love me, really.
But it's that, and for anyone, the impact report, that's the 3-year submission, isn't it? That's how we get recertified.
That's the annual report. Yeah, so you have to publish a report. It's called annual, but you have to publish it twice during the 3-year window. I think what's really interesting, which is where I feel my background comes in, is that I've got half of my clients just look at people and planet, and then the other half look at people, planet, profit. And so the conversations they're really interesting because I can completely see why they may have stalled on one area because something new has come in, or or things maybe have not quite gone to plan, or they're ahead of plan. So it is very interesting, this integration of people, planet, profit, and keeping on top of where you are.
It's interesting what you're saying about that accountability side of it, because I know with I think almost every B Corp that I've interviewed for this podcast over the years, and we don't only interview them in B Corp month, but they almost always say that B Corp has changed the way they manage the business. So whereas previously their board meeting or their internal management meeting would have XYZ on the agenda, now it's almost entirely composed of the B Corp structure and key areas. And whilst you may sit down every month with your accountant for a check-in, now businesses are moving to the point where they're checking in with someone like yourself every month to see we're on process. So you remember, if nothing else, you're looking at the reports.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And do you know what I find really interesting about this? I've just seen it, is that actually the board, they actually really like it. They like it that they're not just talking about the finances, because let's face it, it can be a bit of a drain sometimes when you're talking about your numbers because it's not always rosy. But with the impact, actually, you can see the positive impacts you're having. So it's actually quite nice to have that as a bit of a mirror, I guess, to the finances. And so, yeah, it's very interesting how it changes the dynamics of a business, I think.
And coming down to utter practicalities, given that the initial certification is to hit those 80 points, I see there's a lot of businesses who have a load of stuff they could do, but they know they've reached about 90, 95, so they submit with a list of things they'll do once they've got it. Is that the simplest, most obvious way to start your post-certification, what's going on the board agenda project-wise?
Yeah. So last week with two of my clients, I had to rein them in, right? They did an impact forecast. I gave them all the numbers of what they've achieved, and they said everything they wanted to achieve next year. And it was something like a 30% increase in their impact score. So I was like, right, hang on, because you've got to think this, you've got to think of that, da, da, da. So it was very, very interesting. So it's a little bit operational doing it that way. You know, I encourage them to think a bit more strategically and think how that's going to fit into their broader plan. And they do that. But fundamentally, it's yes, you want to be a purpose-led business. What does that actually mean? What are you actually going to do? And sometimes it's as simple as, right, these are the things we need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's that whole thing when you're a business owner, you're like, I want to do all of this now.
Yeah.
And you've got to kind of get beyond that. But I think where you say bringing it back to the purpose, I think that's one of the things which really appeals to me about B Corp, is that because there's these different areas, these different sections, as it were, it's not purely about reducing your carbon footprint. There's lots of other parts to it. You can choose to do more in the areas that more closely align to your purpose or to what it's capable for you to do. So I totally see that if you get clear on, actually, I don't know, we're a period pants business, so therefore making sure we've got all the right policies in place for our female employees would be an obvious place to go if you're being led that way.
Absolutely. I had a customer, this is a really interesting story, is that they sold a health product actually for well-being for consumers. And we went through the B Corp. They were really keen to do B Corp, and their lowest score at the whole thing was their employee well-being. It was a bit of a light bulb moment for them actually as well, because I was like, well, hang on a minute, you're looking after your customers' well-being, let's look, you know. And it wasn't that they were trying to avoid it, they just had not had the right focus. And that's one of the things I love about the framework for B Corp. It really helps you structure and have a focus around the whole piece.
So in that wellness example, which I think is absolutely fascinating, and I can totally get when you're talking it all day long, you totally forget to actually do it.
Yeah.
But is that a scenario where you'd say to them, right, we could put ourselves in to certify now, but do you want a recertification that shows your lowest area to be wellness? Or should we fix that before we recertify and delay for 3-4 months whilst we fix those places because of the purpose aspect of the business? Is that a scenario where you'd advise someone to hold off?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, and I think it does vary on the customer. So some customers just want to power on and they just want to do it. Yeah, they're not so keen to wait. Other customers would look at it and say, oh, hang on, we're going to have to pause and have a look at this. So it does depend. I think my normal approach is actually every business has got things that they're doing well and not doing so well. As long as you've got the baseline number, then let's just carry on, but acknowledge what you need to change and then build it. I think on balance, I would resist pushing people to pause, because once they pause, sometimes you can't get them going again.
Well, yeah, there is that. If the momentum's there, go with it. And then it becomes a really good news story when you fix those for your first impact statement. So, okay, what have we failed to mention? What other great tips have you got for someone who is certified and in their first few months of certification and working out what they should do next to make sure that when it comes to their annual report or their recertification in 3 years' time, that they are in the best place to not make it last minute homework territory?
There's a few things, but the number one thing is the governance. And I'm finding the governance quite interesting. I can see its profile is starting to raise, and the whole word itself is not a word that sounds very exciting. And when you ask people about governance, they know, so what do you mean? What do you mean by governance? But governance is literally actually managing and talking about what you said you're going to do. And so, as you've said earlier, having it on your board agenda, having it within your team meetings, so it becomes part of the conversation, part of people's action plans. It doesn't have to be really detailed and overwhelming, but just find ways of integrating it within your business. There is definitely something around external communication and stakeholders, and it's very, very easy to forget your suppliers as an example. So do think about how you can engage with them and ask them what they're thinking. Put a mirror up to your stakeholders and say, what are you seeing about us? What can we build on? What's making you a bit uncomfortable? And those kind of questions sometimes can be a little bit uncomfortable, but you only know if you ask a question. So I think stakeholder engagement is quite important, actually.
In my experience, not that I'm a B Corp and not that I've been through this process, but generally in the sustainability space, especially in e-commerce, if you are chatting with your suppliers, you will often find they have ways to help you become more sustainable in all sorts of ways that you hadn't realised. So some of those items on the list become an awful lot easier. Like some of the packaging suppliers are doing phenomenal things to help brands use better packaging, both product packaging and parcel packaging. Some of the couriers are doing amazing things to help you. But if you don't have the conversation, then you might end up thinking you have to work it all out yourself, which obviously is an awful lot more work.
You're spot on. And what I've found on the whole is when I speak to people, generally, not all the time, but generally, people are doing more than you think they're doing. So there's some good stuff happening. And if you speak to people, you find that out, and then that will feed into your plans. And, you may be able to help them, they may be able to help you. It's really interesting. I think your supply chain is a real goodie to dig into.
E-commerce Master Plan is supported by some of the greatest companies in the e-commerce sector. Here's a reminder of who they are.
If your tech stack is becoming a bottleneck to growth, it's time to replatform, and you should check out Shopline. Shopline is the modern commerce platform that's disrupting Europe as one of Asia's leading e-commerce platforms. Whether your bottleneck is setting up more sales channels like social commerce or expanding to new markets globally, Shopline takes care of everything from store setups, checkouts and payments to logistics and more. With single-click migration and out-of-the-box tools, they're there to help. The best part about it, you don't need to pay until your site is live. Here in the UK, they power brands like In The Style and Everything £5, whilst in Asia, they're the platform of choice for huge brands like Lego and Muji. If you want to scale, it's time to book your free trial or have a chat with one of the Shopline team. Find out what Shopline could do for you via ecmp.info/Shopline. That's ecmp.info/SHOPLINE. Do you have a problem only an awesome piece of e-commerce tech can solve? Is your e-commerce tech stack not quite fit for purpose anymore? Then you should check out the latest addition to the e-commerce master plan family, e-commerce tech. Yes, we've got a new person in the clan, or a new website rather in the clan. It's a website where you can explore the latest and best technology on offer. We're going through a hugely changing time in the tech landscape at the moment, and if you want to be bringing the best results you can in your business, then you need to be on top of what's going on in tech. Head to the e-commerce tech website and sign up to our email updates via ecmp.info/tech. That's ecmp.info/TECH. So ecmp.info/tech to find out all the best tools for your e-commerce store.
It's time for the top tips round.
Okay, I love this section because it gives me and our listeners some really quick ideas for taking our businesses to the next level. Sarah, are you ready for the top tips?
Oh, yes.
Okay, here we go then. The book top tip. If everyone listening to this podcast agreed to take Friday off and read a book to make their business better, which book would you recommend?
This book is really easy to read, and you won't need to read it in a day. It's called Together is Better by Simon Sinek. And it's a combination of quotes and illustrations. And it was a book I used when I was going through a time that was really testing for my leadership. And I bought the book and I took it into work. And as a team, we used it. We really referred into this book. And I'm not saying having a good leader is going to be make or break any business, but I think if you can lead, you're in a really, really good spot. And also, it's not easy for leaders. So you have to find ways of supporting yourself. So this book I absolutely love. When I thought about, oh, which book can I share, it reminded me about this book and how much it did help me through quite a challenging time. So no numbers in there, no maths, no impact measures, nothing, but it's just really nice things for you to think about and reflect on.
Oh, I like that. We often get Start With Why recommended by Simon Sinek, but we've not had Together Is Better, I don't think. So that's a top recommendation. Traffic top tip. Which marketing method do you either prize above all others or think doesn't get the press it deserves?
My business is B2B consulting. So the marketing around this, I'll be honest, I'm not a marketeer. I'm an accountant by trade. But I feel, and it's definitely been proved out in my business, is if you do a good job and your customers like what you've done and you ask them to refer you, they will. If they are happy with your service or your product, people like to share. They like to share things that they think are good. So I just think the word of mouth is the most powerful tool.
Oh, so true. I think in every business vertical there is going. I love that one. Okay, tool top tip, maybe a collaboration tool, a social media plugin, a phone app, or just a way of working. Is there a cool little tool you use that makes you and your team more efficient from day to day?
I've got two.
That's okay. We'll let you have two.
One is one we've used for a couple of years, and that's Trello. I just love it. I love Trello. It just plays to my organisational skills with all the different labelling. So Trello's great. The other thing that I have discovered recently is Fathom, which is the AI recording tool. And what I love about Fathom, I've been amazed. It listens to your meeting, records it, and then summarises it. But it also summarises the sentiment of the conversation. So it will tell you whether it was a cool meeting or a pleasant meeting or a really happy meeting. It also, what it does on the screen when it's recording, it gives you a live percentage of how much talking you are doing of the conversation. So if you know you talk a lot, it's quite good because you can sit right. I better stop now because I'm dominating the conversation. So that is a goodie.
And how are we spelling Fathom in this instance?
Fathom.
So actually the normal spelling of Fathom. Amazing.
And it's free. That version's free. You can upgrade, and I'm sure there's all sorts of things you can do with it. But those features I've spoken about are free, and their help desk is very good.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so Fathom and Trello. Finally, the carbon top tip. What's your favourite way to reduce the carbon footprint of an e-commerce business?
The number one carbon emission for the vast majority of businesses is logistics. It's not energy, it's actually logistics. So I think if you can target to make a change within where you get your product and how you ship them, even if it's just, fewer orders. You might want to bulk up your orders, maybe go, say, from weekly to fortnightly, or can you find a supplier a bit nearer? It is logistics. That's what I would say. I would definitely focus on there. And also, obviously, with that, you're going to save money as well. So you're highly likely to save money, I would say, doing that one. So I've given you a people, a planet, and a profit tip.
Love it. Thank you so much. Sarah, before we say goodbye, please let the listeners know where they can find you and your business on the web and social media if they want to get in touch for some help.
Yes. So I'm often on LinkedIn. Please do connect with me. I try and share some useful information and some interesting stories when I can. I do actually quite like connecting within people and having chats with people. So you can find me on there. You can find Profit Impact, www.profit-impact.co.uk. And there's all sorts of free resource on there actually for people to just have a browse and get a bit more information about what is this all about, sustainability, B Corp, how does it connect in with finance? So I've tried to share information there which you can have a cup of tea on a Sunday afternoon and if you want, and have a read. But do have a look.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been brilliant chatting with you, and thank you for enlightening us just that little bit more about B Corp. It's greatly appreciated.
Pleasure. I very much enjoyed it, actually. Thank you, Chloe.
Lovely to catch up with Sarah then. Some brilliant top tips. And I guess for me, the big points from our discussion about B Corp is, one, you're going to be recertifying every 3 years. Do not leave it to the last minute. Build it into the governance of your business, the rhythm, the decision-making processes, so you're always, always, always working on it. That is what pretty much every B Corp that I've chatted to on this podcast says has been the best thing about it, is it's helped them become a better business. And then remember, you've got those impact reports that you produce twice between each recertification. And then finally, yes, there are new regulations or a new set of certification coming in next year. Maybe next year, it's not yet defined. So wait and see what those have to bring. Hopefully, we'll be able to do a whole episode on that in March 2025. But that's a bit of a long time to wait. So don't let that stop you getting started. To get your hands on the notes from this episode, including the top tips and links to what we've mentioned, head over to ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast or use our direct episode short links. That's ecmp.info/the number of this episode. Put that in the URL bar and you'll go straight to the correct episode page. When you get to the website, you can also add yourself to our email list so you don't miss out on any of the other things I share to help you improve your business. If you like this episode, then go check out the rest of our B Corp episodes. We've got an episode about becoming a B Corp. We've got lots of episodes with retailers about their journey through B Corp. If you scroll up your podcast feed, you'll find the 3 episodes before this one, which are all B Corps. And if you go to ecmp.info/B Corp, you will find all our B Corp content. Thank you so much for tuning into this and every episode of the E-commerce Master Plan podcast. On the net zero front, you're listening carbon guilt-free because this is a carbon positive podcast, which means we've bought the carbon credits to offset all our production, distribution, and you're listening to this show. So listen to as many as you like. You're carbon guilt-free. I bring you a new interview every week because I want to inspire and help e-commerce business owners to succeed and thrive with their businesses, including progressing along that all-important path to net zero. So if you know someone this show can help, please tell them to listen to the E-commerce Master Plan podcast. That's it for this week. I hope you have a great week, and don't forget to keep optimizing.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Master Plan podcast. Find out more at ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast.
If your tech stack is becoming a bottleneck to growth, it's time to replatform, and you should check out Shopline. Shopline is the modern commerce platform that's disrupting Europe as one of Asia's leading e-commerce platforms. Whether your bottleneck is setting up more sales channels like social commerce or expanding to new markets globally, Shopline takes care of everything from store setups, checkouts and payments to logistics and more. With single-click migration and out-of-the-box tools, they're there to help. The best part about it, you don't need to pay until your site is live. Here in the UK, they power brands like In The Style and Everything £5, whilst in Asia, they're the platform of choice for huge brands like Lego and Muji. If you want to scale, it's time to book your free trial or have a chat with one of the Shopline team. Find out what Shopline could do for you via ecmp.info/Shopline. That's ecmp.info/SHOPLINE.